Hi, Peter Charles here, and I've got my Voigtla 18mm f2.8 mounted on my Fujifilm X Pro 3, and I've been spending some time out in the wilds with it and enjoying the lens. So let's see my first impressions on its performance and its fun factor. Hi, Peter Charles here, and we're out of Port Maitland with my X Pro 3 and the Voigtla 18mm f2.8 lens. We're going to see what it's can do, especially I'm going to look at some close focus capability, look at its fun factor. I'm going to be looking also about that issue of very little room between infinity and 2 meters to see what manual focus is like with it. Now, as far as the camera goes, unlike the X Pro 1 and the X Pro 2, the X Pro 3 optical viewfinder isn't great for 18mm, so I'm going to be using the EVF this time around, not the optical viewfinder. Other than that, I'm not making any difference, no changes in the way I'm using the camera. So let's get out there and see what I can produce with this lens. Okay, the first thing I'm noticing already is I'm not getting confused between the focusing ring and the aperture ring. It's enough difference in its feel to know which particular ring I'm holding on to and which ring I'm using, so that's a good thing. Using the EVF is not an issue, obviously, but so far so good. Okay, what I'm finding for close focus is often easier to just use the depth of field scale in the viewfinder. That works quite well, rather than try to see the focus peaking in bright light on the rear screen or something like that. So it's working out not too badly, but you know, the proof will in the pudding when we get it back in the computer and see what it's like. Okay, I've shifted location. I'm down by the pier. We're going to look at concrete instead of sand, and see what else we can catch. The last batch of photography was difficult to do a bit with close focus with the X Pro 3. It's really not the right kind of camera for that job. So I'd probably want to be out here with one of my other cameras with more of a tilt screen that I can really move around to get the right shot, much like the screen that's on the ZV-E10 that I'm using right now. So let's get out to the pier and see what we can get. Okay, that kind of wraps it up. One of the things I found that was fairly important with the X Pro 3 is it could be difficult sometimes to get precise focus with focus peaking because the very broad depth of field of this lens. So I thought the best idea would be to just use the pixel format depth of field scale in the viewfinder, and I think that will produce more reliable results for getting precise focus. But we'll see when we get back to the house and get this loaded on the computer and we'll see what we've got. Okay, let's start off with the problems, and this is more to do about me and the camera than the lens, but it illustrates the problem with trying to get good focus at low level using focus peaking and the rear screen in bright sunlight. It wasn't working. This ended up out of focus, and I stopped trying to use that method from that point on. So here's an example where I didn't bother using the rear screen and focus peaking to same focus. Rather, I estimated the distance from me to the head of the bird and set it according to the pixel format depth of field scale in the camera, and it worked out quite well. Now, this isn't as sharp as it could be because it's shot at f20, so that means it's going to be limited by diffraction, but it is in focus. Now, this is the type of image we'd more expect the 18mm on the X Pro 3 to be used for, not the close-up, low-level stuff. It's quite sharp, no problem there, but I did notice that if you really zoom in, there is some chromatic aberration going on, lateral chromatic aberration, and you can see the fringing in the street lamps. So that's something to consider, but I mean, in most normal photography, unless you're blowing it up to a very large size, you won't see it. Okay, you could see from those results there's a bit of a mixed bag. When you do some pixel peeping, you'll see some chromatic aberration in some of the images. Anywhere where there is quite a bit of contrast, bright background, dark foreground, you would see that cyan and magenta fringing on things, but you have to pixel peep to see it. That tends to hurt sharpness though, so it doesn't appear to be as sharp until you run a test and photograph something where there isn't a problem with chromatic aberration, and you see the lens is reasonably sharp. In terms of focusing, I did misfocus a number of times. I had issues trying to use the rear screen in bright lights, nothing new about that. Bright light makes it difficult to read. I did experiment with using the depth of field scale and estimating distance, and that was kind of a mixed bag, and sometimes I got it, sometimes I didn't. So if you're using the viewfinder, I recommend having the electronic viewfinder active for 18mm, because the optical viewfinder on the X Pro 3 doesn't manage 18mm all that well. So being able to focus in this, it wasn't a problem when I used the viewfinder. As I say, I did experiment with using the depth of field scale, which was kind of iffy on that. How did it compare to the old 18mm f2 Fujifilm lens? Well, I would say they're actually quite similar, because the Fujifilm had a little bit of a problem with chromatic aberration as well. Neither of those lenses are spectacularly sharp, but they're reasonably sharp. So if you already have the old 18mm f2, or you used to have one from Fujifilm, what you see there is what you're going to get with this. It's basically the same lens in terms of performance, except this is, of course, manual focus, and the other one is to stop faster, but you've got, you know, poor manual focus performance, slow AF, and it's also a noisy AF as well. So it's your choice which one you want. In terms of close focusing distance, this actually focuses a centimeter closer than the old Fujifilm. Is 18 centimeters with the Fujifilm and 17 centimeters with this. So virtually the same. I mean, no real difference. So if I was using close focus in the viewfinder, or I had this on a camera with a better rear screen, then, you know, I think it would be quite useful for some interesting close focus work. But for like regular landscapes, I think that's where it really shines. You know, as I say, there is that issue with the short throw between infinity and 2 meters, but you get used to that. I mean, I found when I looked in the viewfinder at the depth of field scale, I had a lot more latitude in terms of what I could see, where my focus was going. So it helped with just that little motion for the focusing, and yet I could see quite a swing in the viewfinder in the depth of field scale. So that worked out, or the distance scale, I should say. So that worked out for me as well. So generally speaking, it's a lovely little lens to use. It's exactly the same construction as the 27mm. I mean, when you look at the EXIF data on your computer, you'll see that it actually reports in some places as an 18, in other places it reports as 27. So even the chip is probably the same, only the firmware is different. And they didn't completely change everything in the firmware. But anyway, so it shows you how identical the two lenses are. They operate identically, and the only difference is the focal length, the f-stop, NSA, and the distance scale. So anyway, if you're looking for a fun little 18mm, it's not the world's best performer. Don't expect that you're going to get, mural-sized pin sharpness out of it. You're not. There are better lenses out there for that job. But it is a lot of fun to use. It's small, it's light, beautifully well made. And, I love having it on the camera. I use it as much as I can for as many different things. And it's a classic 18. So, if you're looking for good manual focus 18mm, this will do the job. Cheers.